Hello, my name is Einagul Druckenmiller, and I will be reading Parsha Beshalach from the Tree of Life version. After Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, although that was nearby, for God said, "The people might change their minds if they see war and return to Egypt." So God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Sea of Reeds, and Bnei Israel went up out of the land of Egypt armed. Moses also took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made Bnei Israel swear an oath, saying, "God will surely remember you, and then you are to carry my bones away with you." So they journeyed from Succoth and encamped in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. Adonai went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so they could travel both day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never departed from the people. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel, so that they may turn back and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You are to camp by the sea, opposite Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh will say concerning Bnei Israel, 'They are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness has shut them in.' I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so he will follow after them. Then I will be glorified over Pharaoh, along with all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am Adonai." So they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people, and they said, "What is this that we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he prepared his chariots and took people with him. He took 600 of the finest chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, and the captains over them. Adonai hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so he pursued Bnei Israel, for Bnei Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued them with all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, as well as his charioteers and his army, and overtook them as they were encamped by the sea besides Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, Bnei Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. So they were terrified, and Bnei Israel cried out to Adonai. They said to Moses, "Have you taken us to die in the wilderness because there are no graves in Egypt? Why have you dealt this way with us, to bring us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, 'Let us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians'? It was better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of Adonai, which he will perform for you today. You have seen the Egyptians today, but you will never see them again, ever. Adonai will fight for you, while you hold your peace." Then Adonai said to Moses, "Why are you crying to me? Tell Bnei Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it. Then Bnei Israel will go into the midst of the sea on dry ground. Then behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will go in after them, so that I will be glorified over Pharaoh and all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians will know that I am Adonai, when I have been glorified over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. Also the pillar of cloud moved from in front and stood behind them. So came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. There was the cloud and the darkness over here, yet it gave light by night over there. Neither one came near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. Adonai drove the sea back with a strong east wind throughout the night, and turned the sea into dry land. So the waters were divided. Then Bnei Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, while the waters were like walls on them, or to them on their right and on their left. But the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Now came about during the morning watch that Adonai looked at the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, and caused the army of the Egyptians to panic. He took off their chariot wheels and caused them to drive heavily, so that the Egyptians said, "Get away from the presence of Israel, for Adonai fights for them against the Egyptians." Then Adonai said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters come back upon the Egyptians, and over their chariots and their horsemen." So Moses stretched his hand over the waters, and the sea returned to its strength at the break of dawn. The Egyptians were fleeing from it, but Adonai overthrew them in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and the entire army of Pharaoh that went in after them into the sea. Not one of them remained. But Bene Israel had walked on dry land in the midst of sea, and the waters were like walls to them on their right hand and on their left. So Adonai saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great work that Adonai had done over the Egyptians, the people feared Adonai, and they believed in Adonai and his servant Moses. Then Moses and Bene Israel sang this song to Adonai. How sing to Adonai, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Adonai is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will glorify him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Adonai is a warrior, and Adonai is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea, and his chosen captains have sunk into the sea of reeds. The deep covers them. They sank into the depth like a stone. Your right hand, Adonai, is glorious in power. Your right hand, Adonai, dashes the enemies to pieces. In the greatness of your excellency, you overthrow those who resist you. You send forth your wrath. It consumes them as stubble. With the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The flood stood upright as a heap. The deeps became firm ground, and in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall gorge on them. I will draw my sword, my hand will destroy them. You blew with your wind, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, Adonai, among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders? You have stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your loving kindness led the people you have redeemed. You guided them in your strength to your holy habitation. When the people hear, they will tremble. Anguish will seize the inhabitants of Philistia. When the chiefs of Edom are terrified, trembling grips of Moab's mighty men, all of Canaan's inhabitants will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the greatness of your arm, they become still as a stone. Until your people cross over, Adonai. Till your people whom you purchased cross over. You bring them in and you plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, your place, Adonai, that you have made for yourself to dwell in. The sanctuary, Adonai, which your hands have prepared. Adonai will reign forever and ever. For Pharaoh's horses with his chariots and his horsemen went into the sea, but Adonai brought the waters of the sea back over them. Yet Bene Israel walked in the midst of the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing, as Miriam sang to them, Sing to Adonai, for he is highly exalted, the horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Then Moses led Israel onward from the sea of reeds. They went out into the wilderness of Shur, but they traveled 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink from the waters because they were bitter. On account of this it was called Marah. So the people complained to Moses, saying, What are we going to drink? So he cried out to Adonai, and Adonai showed him a tree. When he threw it into the waters, they were made sweet. There he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them. He said, If you diligently listen to the voice of Adonai your God, do what is right in his eyes, pay attention to his mitzvot, and keep all his decrees, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have put on the Egyptians, for I am Adonai who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there by the waters. They journeyed on from Elim, and the entire community of Ben Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after leaving the land of Egypt. But the whole congregation of Bene Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Bene Israel said to them, "If only we had died in the hands of Adonai in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread until we were full. But you have brought us into the wilderness to kill this entire congregation with hunger." Then Adonai said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. The people will go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I can test them to find out whether they will walk according to my Torah or not. So on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather day by day." So Moses and Aaron said to all Bnei Israel, "In the evening you will know that Adonai has brought you out from the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of Adonai, for he has heard your complaining against him. What are we? You complain against us?" Then Moses said, "Adonai will give you meat to eat in the evening and enough bread to fill you in the morning, since Adonai hears your complaints that you mutter against him. What are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against Adonai." Moses said to Aaron, "Say to all the congregation of Bnei Israel, 'Come near before Adonai, because he has heard your complaining.'" Then, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of Bnei Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of Adonai appeared in the cloud. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "I've heard the complaining of Bnei Israel. Speak to them, saying, 'At dusk you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am Adonai your God.'" So when evening fell, quail came up and covered the camp. Moreover, in the morning there was a large layer of dew all around the camp. When the layer of dew was gone, all the surface of the desert was a thin, flake-like frost, as fine as the frost on the ground. When Bnei Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Then Moses said to them, "It is the bread that Adonai has given you to eat. This is the word that Adonai has commanded. Every man is to gather according to his need, an omer per person, according to the number of people per household. Each man is to take it for those who are in his tent." Bnei Israel did so, and some gathered more, some less. When they measured it out with an omer, those who gathered more had nothing left over, and those who had gathered less did not lack at all. Every man gathered according to his appetite. Also Moses said to them, "Let no one save any of it until the morning." However, they did not listen to Moses. Some of them preserved it until the morning, but it bred worms and rotted. So Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it morning by morning, each man according to his need, and as the sun became hot, it melted. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each individual. So all the leaders of the community came and informed Moses. But then he said to them, "This is what Adonai has said. Tomorrow is a Shabbat rest, a holy Shabbat to Adonai. Bake whatever you would bake and boil whatever you would boil. Store up for yourselves everything that remains to be kept until the morning." So they set it aside until the morning, just as Moses instructed, and it did not rot, nor were there any worms. Then Moses said, "Eat that today, because today is a Shabbat to Adonai. Today you will not find it in the field. You are to gather it for 6 days, but the 7th day is the Shabbat, and there will be none." Yet on the 7th day some of the people went out to gather, and they found none. Adonai said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my mitzvot and my Torah? See, Adonai has given you this Shabbat, so on the 6th day he gives you the bread of 2 days. Let every man stay in his place, and let no man go out on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. The house of Israel named it manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Then Moses said, "This is what Adonai has commanded. Let a full omer of it be kept throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out from the land of Egypt." Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put a full omer of manna inside it. Store it up before Adonai to keep throughout your generations." Just as Adonai commanded Moses, Aaron stored it up in front of the testimony to be preserved. Bnei Israel ate the manna for 40 years. They ate the manna until they came into the inhabited land, when they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is a 10th part of an ephah. All the congregations of Bnei Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin in stages, according to the command of Adonai, and camped in Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. So the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test Adonai?" But the people thirsted for water there, and they complained against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt? To kill us with thirst along with our children and our cattle?" So Moses cried out to Adonai, saying, "What am I to do for these people? They're about ready to stone me." Adonai said to Moses, "Walk before the people, and take of the elders of Israel with you, along with your staff with which you struck the river. Take it in your hand and go. Behold, I will stand before you, and there upon the rock in Horeb you are to